Good day and good evening, and welcome to Daily Stream with me, Chaiji, and you can just call me Kai. Given that I have been, and I'm sure many others have been, a little busy this week of holiday cheer, or not, depending on what you do, I haven't finished my weekly stuff. I haven't done my weekly clear of Juno. I haven't gotten my toothpick from M4N that I won't use for anything, but I do anyway because it's funny. I haven't done those things. I haven't got my weekly cap yet. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. So this time, we're doing some dailies. It's been a while since we've done that. I'll probably prioritize the duties that give something like weekly tomestones if you're max level, like for instance expert leveling, trial, alliance, normal raid. We'll see like what the time is as we go, because I really do want to make sure that we get Juno and M4N done while we're here. With that said, hey Aradel, hey Shaq, hey Marcus, hey Rost, hey Valvadis, hey Yaharis, hey Girahin, hey Gassel, hey Tremere Marios, hey Vince, hey Tina Lee, hey Lana, hey Kaziragoon, hey Rivane, hey PQ, hey Agent Monica, and hey Nox. Hope you're all doing very well. We're, of course, doing the dailies on Louisoix over on Chaos. So, I mean, if you're in a different region, you know, this could be a way to, like, meet up with a few players. But, it's a little difficult for me to bring everyone. My connection is garbage over on OCE. So... But we also already have a bunch of people here. So we might have to make multiple groups. And speaking of, if you would like to join me for Expert Roulette, come on over to me. Just come over and stand with me. So that I know you want to join. And then I'll see if how well we can spread it out. So that I don't bring the same few players every run. Shoop. And oh, we already have the group somewhat spread out. Oh, I see, Agent Monica. Yeah, that I guess that's fair, especially if you have like a period where you're not going to be playing. It makes sense to do that. But thank you. Yeah, we could also make multiple groups if there's more people. I think Gassel was suggesting it in game. Shoop and shoop. Oh boy, the funny one. Also, thank you, Ardell. Yep, I have mentioned this before. I'm not 100% sure how it all works with, you know, algorithm stuff, but as far as I know, it does help the algorithm to prefer a stream if it's like getting likes as stuff is happening. So it is very much appreciated. But I also do recognize going, can you like the stream before I've even done anything is a little, yeah, I get it. Like the classic, you put on a video, 15 seconds into it, it's like it. No, that's not your fault, Aradel. You always do this for me. That's, it's me going, by the way. That's me. That's not you, Aradel. That's me. I have not, I'm pretty sure I haven't instructed Aradel to do that. That's me. And it is very much appreciated that you do that, Aradel. Also, hey, Bobolis. Hope you're doing well. Nediak, hope you're doing well as well. Is it that bad, Bubbles? Like, I would say, in my experience, personally, it was very scary at first, but as you get a little bit more acquainted with the dungeon, it's not that bad. If you have any latency issues, any whatsoever, then that's a whole different story. Like, this boss hates players that don't have a god tier connection. Like, for some reason, he just hates them. Like, he just wakes up in the morning and is like, I'm gonna ruin some people with bad connections day. Every morning. Yeah, that's true, Agent Monica. It kind of led to the point relatively quickly where it's like, I've already finished all the daily, weekly stuff that I need without doing a whole stream dedicated to it under normal circumstances. So I think that's kind of why I just stopped doing them, spent that time on something maybe a little bit more exciting. There is a trick to these little guys running across. It's not super helpful because, like, your average player might not be coordinating very well on it. But there is a trick to it. The trick being that the first time the kids run across, they will aim for the character that is the furthest away from them. And on the run back, when they run across the first time, they'll target the person that is closest to them. So you can see, like, that one was running that way. So if you have, like, ranged players or your healer, they can bait them, which can make it a lot easier. It doesn't trivialize it, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it makes it easier because you can heavily control where they go by, like, positioning yourself in a certain way. Speaking of, also thank you so much, Tremere Marios. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. And also, hey, Chili Taters and Nuro. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, the teapot, people found out that there is, like, for the first and second wave, there is, like, 2 or 3 patterns in total. For each step, of course. But it's simple enough that once you understand how the pattern works, you can kind of just glance at it and figure out where the safe spot is. Hilariously, I believe the general consensus on after the on the third or later set of teapots, there are way more patterns. So, like, at that point, you kind of just have to hope that you get one of the more easy to read ones. But there's also the part that a lot of players have said that due to gearing, like item level stuff, it's generally not an issue, because usually you will clear the fight before that. The thing that was heavily distracting me was that I don't know, Elana, you have a comment on this? It looked like your Perfectio ticked out. Looked like it just slowly ticked out. And that's the worst when that happens. My first experience with using Reawaken as a Viper was discovering that you didn't have to do the job quest to get it. So in the job quest fight itself, I realized that Serpent's Ire gave me one as the buff that gave me one ticked out. As in, I clicked Reawaken and it was like, nah man, you didn't make it. Too late. Well, Lana did get it in the end. Okay. Jose Popular Monster and Valvadis. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, this kind of dungeon becomes a lot harder as people stop doing it. And if you haven't done it very many times, then it becomes a lot harder because then people don't remember what the strategy is or how to predict it. A truck driving gamer, hope you're doing well. You really like to just stand there, Mr. Jag in the Pot. It's expert, no one is expecting perfect show play. Nice. Nope. No tank buster, please. Nero says I'm saddened that they stopped giving gear sets from the base expansion max level dungeons from Shadowbringers onwards. Oh yeah. I didn't realize that that was the moment where it stopped doing that. I'll say I understand why. I'll say I understand, like, practically speaking, I kinda understand why. Because if they're both giving you a tome set and also simultaneously giving you like dungeon set, it's like, I mean, you could argue that it's the same thing for the accessories that drop in the dungeons, but like it's like they give you an armor set for just completing the MSQ, right? Like they started doing that, whereas or like for participating in the MSQ even, they kind of started on that with Shadowbringers as well. Whereas in Stormblood you had to complete your job quest to do that. Although, I mean, it's not exactly like that's considered optional, is it? And by them just handing you the armor set and then the accessories that drop from the remaining duties being the same item level as the armor set, means that if they dropped actual armor, it would be like a little pointless, like in raw item level, because they just handed your gear set that's just as good or better. But there is, of course, like the glamour point of view of it all. That, I mean, just because it isn't good practically, could look nice. Yeah, I see that, Nero. I would say because the gear that drops from all 3 dungeons is the same, the armor set would probably be completely unrelated to these 3 dungeons. .1 dungeon has an armor set. That's correct, Elaine, but that's also not what we were talking about. But yes, all the dungeons after the initial 3 drop gear. That is correct. Nox says in game, did we forget to melee LB the second boss? Who LB is the second boss? I'll admit it has never occurred to me. Like, I've never actually sat down to calculate on anything in that regard. But it occurs to me that LBing the second boss is like, if you thought it was rare whether players use LB like on the final boss or against the trash, then I would say it's even more rare to see a melee LB or any LB on the second boss. But I don't know if it affects your LB later down the line. Like if you only have melees, then it doesn't, like, you're not losing out on a ranged LB. And that's also true, Nuro. The weirdest thing is that because the farmable tombstone gear is there as this new gear set comes out in the first place, or rather these dungeons come out in the first place, there's actually no point in the game where the initial gear from the 3 starting dungeons of an expansion, like max level dungeons, are good. Because there's better gear. Oh. Huh. Cat says, I looked at the tapes, you got LB1 when the second boss was at 4.5%. Oh. Yeah, there would be no point in using it. Also, hey, Ridleyan, hope you're doing well. And Delane. And Matthew. But yeah, the accessories are okay if, like, they're decent options. And also, he's FFXIV. Hope you're doing well as well. Rare visit from Clove. The accessories from the 3 starting dungeons basically are okay until you've gotten, like, tome gear of some sort. Like, just at this expansion, that gear is like 690, and then you just buy item level 700 gear. And even that gear is also often considered quote-unquote kinda pointless. Because the only purpose of the item level 700 gear is so that you have it, so that you're strong enough, and you don't even need it, but it helps you to get the 710 accessories and weapons from the 2 initial extremes. So not only are the accessories from the initial dungeons kinda, like, not super helpful, but there's a set of accessories above it that are also, like, kinda eh. Right? Hey, Ragnas, hope you're doing well. The crown next to my name means that I am a mentor, which means essentially that I have stated that I am willing to help other players. Not all mentors, not all mentors are equally nice and helpful, but that's what it means. Like, if I go in here and turn it off, and you see it disappears, and then when I turn it back on again, there is this, like, sort of like contract that pops up that I have to say okay to be allowed to use it. And the long story short is that it means that if you see a mentor crown, then you should expect the players that have those crowns to be friendly and welcoming and helping new sprouts. But yeah, in a funny twist, the game doesn't really explain that, I don't think, to new players. I have videos on the channel talking a bit more on what a mentor is. I guess I wonder why they're crowns, though, and not watering cans. That is an excellent question. And why is the returning player icon a plant with a little crown in it? That is a returning player. It's like they went, I have a sprout. I have a crown. That's true, Nox. That's true. But the thing is, if the boss is at 4.5% HP and you start winding up a limit break, you'll basically be spending that time you could have spent just doing your GCD, and the boss would probably have died only a couple seconds later. So it's like, it's such a small, like if it's at 4.5%, it gets so close that I don't know how much of a difference it makes, but you're right. You're probably right that it is a flower, but it's a yellow flower, so it can easily be mistaken for a crown. Like, if they had chosen any other color, then there's a less of a chance that there would be the mix-up that I just made. Also, you tell the bar, and Liv, and Mizunashi, hope you're doing well. Who would like to join me for leveling roulette? Come on over to me. And that's also true, Nox. And that's exactly what I had in mind, is that you'd probably see, like, the classic execute with LB. Thank you, Aridel. I would say to that, Ragnas, that you'll probably be fine. It's not like your average player isn't going to be like a complete jerk if you're doing a mistake and you're not a sprout. It's more like, I would say, a lot of players will be more likely to expect a little more from you when you're no longer a sprout, but your average player will be more likely to just keep their complaints to themselves, if that makes sense. Like, if you may have seen some of my mentor videos, like my mentor roulette videos, where there is a much higher chance that I'll be like, oh, this person did this mistake and so, and there's a much greater chance that I'll be like, but they're a sprout, so that makes perfect sense. Whereas if they're not a sprout, it doesn't mean that I'm like, so they should know better. It's just, there's a little bit less of, you could say, an expectation that it's totally fine that, like, they're probably not as knowledgeable. But the logic being that your sprout icon disappears naturally when you have played the game, like in-game hours, for 300 hours, and also you've gotten very far in the main quest. Like, you have to pretty much reach the current expansion before the game, like, takes it away, but you'll keep it until you reach that point. Which means also why you can sometimes see a sprout that has actually reached the end game because they've just rushed through it all. But you can probably see that if you're making extremely basic mistakes, and you don't have a sprout icon, some players will still be like, you have been playing this game for like 300 hours. And you still don't know to, like, you know, for instance, keep your GCD spitting, like, use your actions as you can. Like, things that for some players is the most obvious thing ever, but for others it's not. And that's also true about Vadis. The players that you need to watch out for when you no longer have a sprout icon, you should also watch out for even if you had one. Or even if you have one. They don't care. Those toxic spewings are rated E for everyone. And not in the good way. What is found more difficult is to remember all the mechanics from all the dungeons. You don't have to do that. As you get more acquainted with the content, Ragnas, you will start to see patterns. And the casual content, which is most of the content you'll experience on your journey, is friendly and nice enough that they give you a chance to react. And you will eventually start to notice the patterns. You'll see, like, the game is designed in such a way where they try to, like, repeat similar things so that the knowledge you've already accumulated... Oh, right. We can't use limited leveling because Rust doesn't have enough high-level duties. That's fine. But yeah, you'll get there, Ragnas. And as the duties become more complex, you'll, like... you'll get used to it. Like, it won't feel as scary, trust me. Hey Ashley, hope you're doing well. That does sound like strange advice to be given, Ragnas. Just reading this for anyone that that missed it. Ragnas says, I made a mistake from the very beginning because I followed the wrong advice. I skipped the story because I've been told that it wasn't worth it. I'm pretty sure most players, and probably almost everyone, if not everyone, in this chat will be like, if it's your first character, you should probably not skip the story. Because the story, like, it's not even about whether you enjoy the story, it's about it, like, introduces the difficulty of the game in a more natural pace instead of skipping to the hard part, right? So by skipping the story, you jump to a part that is really difficult. What you could do about that, Ragnas, is you could make a new character. Like, I'm not even joking. You could make a new character and then just not skip the story on that one. So that you don't have this weird experience. That's up to you, though. But that is a way to quote-unquote fix it. Others say that they had a similar experience of being told that it wasn't worth it. I have a feeling that a lot of players have skipped the story because they have had friends that are like, no, you can skip that. Just come up to us. Just join us in the in Funnyland. Them completely forgetting that by doing that, you miss a pretty important part of the game. Also, hey 11. Hope you're doing well. And he's off. Hope you're doing well as well. And Lilia. Did I miss anyone else coming in? And so your question, Ashley, about piety. Can you repeat it? It kind of slid out of the amount of chat that I can see. If you want to do high-end content, just skip it. Well, like that's the thing, is that if you just want to do high-level content, then yeah, the fastest way to do exactly that is by skipping the story. But the story is also there to like equip you for that hard content. So I think those that gave you that advice forgot something. Forgot something important. Alright, Jack, enjoy your evening. And also that, if you use a story skip, then it also means that you skipped, like, basically your inspiration. Why is all this happening? See, what could piety have to be more cohesive as a healer stat? Piety could have, if it increased your healing done, that could already be an interesting start, because it doesn't. I'm in a server that is empty. If you are on an American server like Dynamis, or a data center I should say, then you can make use of the data center travel system to just visit any of the other American data centers and do your content there. I would say, Rivane, the reason why I still wouldn't exactly recommend that you jump all the way to the hard content is that unless you're really good at those other games, and like that's true, just lay that gauntlet down. You can have played World of Warcraft for 10,000 hours and still suck at it. And if you're not good at like understanding the games that you play, which can be a thing, that can be totally normal, then you skipping to the hard part means that you're going to be missing the learning part of learning the differences between World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. Just to take one, animation locking. Like, there you go. Like, in World of Warcraft, if something is not on the GCD, then you can use it at any time. It takes not even a frame to use it. You just click it and it happens. If it's not on the GCD, then it doesn't cost you anything to do it. The only exception being that if you're like casting something, you have to weave it when you're not casting something. That's not how Final Fantasy works. So you wouldn't know that unless you were quick to like pick that up as you play the game. Another thing is how mechanics resolve. In World of Warcraft, if you step out of the cone AoE, just watch a guy called Chaiji and learn about his short on weaving. Yeah, you could do that. Another thing is the telegraph thing. In World of Warcraft, you step out of the circle, like step out of the cone AoE in front of the boss just before. Whoa, wait! There's no more mobs here. We'll just fight it here. If you step out of the AoE as it hits, like just as it lands, that will count. In Final Fantasy XIV, that doesn't count. You have to be standing outside the cone when the cast bar finishes. Like, some players will see that and go, oh, I guess I'm lagging. Nope, that's just how Final Fantasy works. Like, these kinds of things are things that you would learn to adapt to as you play through the story. If you're really good at these kinds of games, you might, like, put 2 and 2 together relatively quickly, and if you can do that, like, then sure. But the reason why I'm saying it like this is because I would say that it's more likely that you won't than you will, without like getting it taught by someone else. And I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of players that bought a story skip because it'll be fine, and it was in fact not fine. Which is why I would lean heavier towards just do your homework. Just do the story, man. Just do the story. Just do your homework. Yeah, another thing you can do is also, you know, practice on a striking dummy, right? Do do some of the content you skipped. That will be faster than like doing the actual story all the way. Just buy a skip and then just, you know, do some of the dungeons that you missed as a result. Yeah, actually, back to your question about piety. The big problem is that even if we made it so that piety increased your healing done, would that actually make piety a more sought after stat? To your question, PQ, replace Blizzard 4 with Freeze. And you can't use Flare from Ice. One way you could do that, one way you could change that, is either use High Fire 2 or just Transpose. But that's two different rotations. The basic, like, the gold standard of what you're supposed to do, which is not optimal as it turns out, is to go High Blizzard 2, Freeze, High Fire 2, Flare, Flare, Flare Star, and of course use High Thunder 2 whenever the dot is running out. But yeah, no, not Blizzard 4 on AoE. Freeze is the one you want to use for AoE. Freeze is basically Blizzard 4 for AoE. It's just, for some reason, you get it in the opposite order. The optimal, like, maximum damage AoE rotation for Black Mages at the moment, because it could change, incorporates Transpose quite aggressively. The way you do it is that you have to already be in Umbral Ice or Astral Fire, just for starters. But the way you do it is that for Ice, you just transpose to Ice. And then you use Freeze. And then you use an attack, like an instant attack, like the typical choices are High Thunder 2 or Foul. And it's best that it's an instant attack. And it should not be High Blizzard and it should not be Freeze. Like, use Freeze once and that's it. That gives you, it gives you Umbral Hearts and enough MP to perform the fire magic that you want to do. So for instance, you could go transpose into Ice, Freeze, Foul, and then you transpose back into Fire. And then, now that you're back in Fire, you just immediately cast Flare, Flare, Flare Star. And then you either use an instant attack so that, you know, you can neatly transpose back into Ice, or you just transpose back into Ice anyway, because Black Mage's AoE is a little wonky and weird. It is still optimal, even if you clip your GZD transposing out of Fire. But yeah, the instant attack that you could use there could be... the instant attack you could use there could be High Thunder too. It could be Foul. But as I said, it could also just be nothing. It could straight up be nothing and it would still be pretty nice. It would be pretty okay. That's the considered optimal AoE rotation at the moment. But simply High Blizzard 2, Freeze, High Fire 2, Flare, Flare, Flare Star is like the gold standard. Like that's the basics. And then you of course use High Thunder 2 where it makes sense. But that's it. I hope that helps, PQ. Also, Hiamus, hope you're doing well. And Rockwell. And Suzaku. To the piety thing again. That I keep coming back to. a little bit at a time. The reason why it wouldn't be enough to make it so that Piety actually increased healing done is, like, the reason why I can say that just unflinching without even having seen it happen is because Tenacity has gotten a gigantic buff to its defensive value in Dawntrail. And it even got a power boost. Like, the damage portion is also better. The healing portion is also better as a result, because it's equal to the damage boost. But despite that, Tenacity gives you less damage output than Determination. So Determination is considered better. I've said this before, that it sounds absolutely ludicrous to some that it has, like, that people will still say that it's bad, even though it's basically a minuscule difference. But players would still not pick Piety unless they needed the MP, even if it increased healing done. Another thing you could do is would just be to make it so that Piety increases damage done, but now you've basically recreated the Tenacity problem, and as I said, that also doesn't work. Because the problem is that optimization dictates that nothing less than the best damage output will be accepted when optimizing. And yes, just to not completely color this in black and white, there are a lot of players that don't care that much about perfect optimization. And you don't need perfect optimization to, like, complete things in the game. Skill is often a much greater factor in that regard. But yes, exactly, Suzaku. If it's not optimal, it's bad. It's like the general thing that happens. Piety functionally is fine right now. The problem with Piety, which is also a little bit of a problem with Tenacity, is for Piety, if you don't need the MP, then Piety does nothing. Nothing. Tenacity, if you don't need the damage reduction, and technically you don't. So Tenacity is worse Determination. One thing leads to another. Determination is better Tenacity, so why take Tenacity when you can choose Determination? Even though, and this is a build that, like, Zaft put together a full maximum item level build that is pretty good. Like, 3% less DPS than the best in slot set. And it takes, like, a sixth less damage than the best in slot set. But it does 3% less DPS. But it takes so much less damage because Tenacity. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Tenacity is stacked, and it's still not good enough. So there's basically nothing you can do for Piety, aside from just making it so that Piety has all the goodness that Determination has, but also gives you MP. But now you've just, like, made it so that healers will pick Piety instead of Determination. Like, and that wasn't the solution, right? It's a little bit like, I'll skip it, like, I'll move on real quick, but it would be like going, oh, Pictomancer's too strong in FRU, nerf it by 25%. Great, now Pictomancer is the worst job in the game. Just flat. You didn't solve anything. Like, now it's just a different job that's strongest, and now Pictomancer sucks. Good job. So making Determination exclusive to DPS isn't much helping? You could do that, but wouldn't it make more sense to make Direct Hit exclusive to DPS, considering that Direct Hit is the stat that only increases your damage done? I'll say Edge, hope you're doing well. Is it worth jumping into M1 to 4S right now? Yes. Sure. There isn't a better time There will never be a better time to jump into M1 to 4S. Granted, Chaotic is taking a lot of the attention, but today is the best time you could start Savage raiding in the first raid tier of Dawntrail. Because tomorrow is worse. And the day after that is worse. So yes, if you want to Savage raid in the near future, start today. If you're like, I could also just wait until the next raid tier, the experience you will gain from starting today will make you better prepared for the second raid tier, which almost certainly will be harder. So start today. If you want to Savage raid, start today. Maybe we should switch out 10 Nasity with 11 Nasity. The level 50 Tombstone healer gear pieces have the direct hit. That's because it used to be accuracy. There used to be an accuracy stat. And given that all jobs need accuracy to hit, all roles used to get that. But yeah, basically, and this actually applies to most things in life. If you ask yourself, is it too late to start on X? It has to be rather specific for me to say no. Most things in life, if it's not like I mean, it could be a wave thing. Like, if you're like, is it too late to invest in this stock? Then I would say, well, first of all, don't take investment advice from me. I'm a YouTuber. But second of all, you know, use your brain. But if it's like a practical thing, if you're like, is it too late to get into this thing? Well, it's not going to be less too late tomorrow. So if you're interested, try. Start today and see if it was too late. Try and see if it works. If you go, nah, it doesn't really work. It wasn't really what I expected. And what I expected can also include, I wasn't expecting to sit in queue for 3 hours. I don't know if that's going to happen to you, but like, that's part of the experience. So I would say the best you can do if you're asking yourself, just in general advice in life, is it too late to get in on this thing, like start on this thing? Start today. Not tomorrow, because if you're already asking yourself if it's too late, it's probably not less too late tomorrow. Installation says, I tried to apply to a static and they wanted to see logs, but I've never raided before. I have no logs. That's an awkward problem, but that probably means that it wasn't exactly it might not have been like a good starting group anyway. Who are you asking, TND? I'm not French. I'm not French. And why are you censoring it out like that? No, not like that, Chili Taters. It's actually pretty normal for players to because that's an easy way to evaluate whether someone is like good at the game. Is to see, well, how much damage can you bring? Logs are against TOS. Let me explain that one to you, Chili Taters. The official ruling of third-party tools and plugins for Final Fantasy XIV is that it is all off limits. If you scrutinize the rules enough, having a browser open while you play Final Fantasy XIV could be considered a third-party tool and would be illegal. Having OBS running could be considered illegal. It depends on how much you read into it. Basically, the TOS is so wide that if the developers decide that you're banned because you went too far, they already gave you so much line that... Oh, lag spike. Just waiting. Swinging a little bit. Wow. YouTube. Come on, YouTube. Get it together. Get it together. I just want to reiterate, now that it's coming back, that Final Fantasy XIV was not lagging. Yeah, exactly, Joshua. Weird coincidence. Right. Where was I? Basically, the rules in the TOS are so incredibly wide that if they decide that you're banned because you cheated, then you're not like, if we say that the line is... oh man, if only I had like a whiteboard behind me. I have a whiteboard over there, but I don't have one behind me. If we say that the line is here, right? And you crossed it, like they ban you because you cross it. You didn't cross it like you were here. Because they laid out the rules so strictly, you're like all the way over. Like, there's no question if you're banned for using tools, you definitely use tools. Like, you definitely broke the rules. Because they made it so strict that basically anything goes. They just decide what is too far on the fly. Why do you own a whiteboard? Why don't you own a whiteboard? From that, we can then like walk it back and go, the general consensus on how that works is that you will likely get banned if you're basically streaming yourself, recording yourself, basically having like on full display that you're using plugins of some sort. Like if you're actively streaming it so that like they can basically see you cheating, essentially cheating live, that could probably be what gets you banned. By that token, the way we usually describe it, especially like when we're trying to explain it to new players, is Fight Club rules, which means don't talk about it. Don't ever mention that you use any tools in-game ever, and you'll probably be fine. Don't act like you have tools either. If you have a DPS meter on your screen, if anyone asks in-game, then you don't have a DPS meter on your screen. And you can't see that, I don't know, the summoner in your group is sandbagging like crazy. You can't see that. Even if you can, you have to actually overact that, because sometimes you can see with your eyes by looking at that player that they're garbage. Like you can see that they're not doing anything. You can see it on the enmity that they're producing, that they're at the bottom. You don't need a DPS meter to see that they're bad, but because you have a DPS meter on your screen, potentially, you have to just go, I might not have noticed that they sucked without the DPS meter, so I just have to act like I don't know. And then you have to decide what you will do with that. We take it one step further. FF logs, the way that works is that you run a DPS meter, ACT, and then you send the logs to FF logs. And once they're up there, they're posted by your username, and if your character is named, I don't know, Caetsu Chaiji, right? But your FFlogs account is named Bob. Just Bob. Then they don't know that it was you, Caetsu Chaiji in my case, that posted the log. So they don't know who's responsible for that log. It could be anyone in the group. There can, of course, be like a correlation that if you see that there's like 50 logs of your character doing, I don't know, one of the like the newest extreme, and the only character that changes, like the only character that is consistent between all those logs is obviously you, but you have exactly 50 clears and every single one was logged. There's a reasonable probability that it's you who made them, but there isn't a certainty, like there isn't 100% chance. It could be someone else who posted all of those logs. There is a chance that all of them were posted by other people, so they don't know who's to blame. And as far as I know, Final Fantasy XIV will not ban you for that unless they have like the smoking gun. They see it's you, and the smoking gun is you streaming yourself with a third-party tool on your screen, and you pointing at it and going, look, there's my whatever tool, right? By that extension, I don't use any tools. And that's not even like Fight Club things. I don't have a DPS meter. Like, I can safely hide my face. Oh, look, a chat log. Ooh. So, like, that's the extent. But the thing is, and I just want to, like, come back to that a little bit, Chili Taters, because you could say, from all that I just said, that, well, just because they're not banned, technically they're still cheating by using the logs, right? I would say no. Technically, you know, you could be re-evaluating your play by, for instance, recording your gameplay and see what mistakes you made. The log just makes it slightly easier. And I would also say there isn't anything evil in having logs. The evil comes from the players, and that's actually the reason why most of them, like basically all plugins, well, actually, the reason why TOS says no plugins. Because before that ruling, as far as I've heard, there had been incidents where people were basically being treated badly because they didn't do enough DPS. As in, the reason why this TOS stuff is there is that just having this barrier, this danger of if you actually tell Mr. Suck that he sucks, you might just get banned. That has an impressive effect. That's also the reason why a lot of players say you can't safely teach anyone anything in the game. What they actually mean is I can't say stop using Cure 1. Redacted, without getting banned. Like, I'm not joking. I have legitimately had a case of someone saying you can't tell anyone anything in the game without getting banned anymore. And I asked a little bit for clarification, and they went, well, I got banned for trying to give someone advice, and when I pushed a little further, they basically admitted that they told this Sprout that they might as well uninstall if they don't know how to XYZ. Yeah, no surprise you got banned for that. Like, what did you expect? And those are the kinds of players that are held at bay by having this slightly, like this somewhat, maybe a little bit excessive strictness. But using logs can help you to understand the game better and get better at the game. And if you're not using that for any ill intentions, if you're just doing it for your own improvement, then it doesn't hurt anyone. In fact, it helps everyone, because you're better for it, so you can help the other players. But specifically because FF Logs has this extra step of separation, you can somewhat safely discuss logs in-game, because that doesn't mean that you posted it. Right? Which means it doesn't mean that you cheated. Well, cheated, quote-unquote. Well, TND, I have a video that explains ways you could try and tell players how to do better. But you can't just tell them that they're bad. What'll happen there is that they'll just be insulted. Like, let me put it like this. I've given this example before. The way some players want to tell the bad players how to play better is the chat log equivalent of punching someone in the face and then going, oh man, can you help me with this thing? I need help with, like, moving this table. Can you help me with that? And they're like, oh man, my nose, you punched me in the face. No, I'm not going to help you move the table. Absolutely not. I might have before you punched me in the face, but now you punched me in the face. So now I'm actually more likely to prevent you from moving the table just because you would like me to help you. You want to move the table, I now want you to not be able to do that because you hurt me. Now I'll hurt you. So by leading with something like that, you immediately lose all chance that they're going to listen to you in the first place. So if you're a little more, if you stop being mean about it when you try to give advice, if you ask if you can give advice, a lot of players will say yes. And a lot of players will listen if you say it in a polite way. But a lot of players will not. And you can't do much there. You can't do much there. But that's just part of a multiplayer game. Like, that's just part of a multiplayer game. That you also have, like, just like how you can sometimes be lucky and be paired up with crazy good players, sometimes you get paired with bad players, sometimes you get paired with mid players. And that's just the way it is. We can't just assume that every single player in the game is going to be a computer master that will play exactly how you want them to. Hey, go! And I think a few others also checked in. I hope you're doing well. I was like, money! True. And yeah, just to round up on the third-party tool thing. Personally, the reason why I'm like, I mean, logs are pretty okay, is that they don't actually help you while the battle is going. It helps you after the fact to review what you did wrong. Most other plugins or third-party tools of whatever sort could help you in the battle and give you an advantage. For instance, there are tools similar to World of Warcraft's deadly boss mods that just announce what the mechanic is going to be and it even tells you what to do about it. Things like that. And World of Warcraft chose to go a different route. In World of Warcraft, there are mechanics so hard that most players would say they're not meant to be beaten with human abilities. There's a tool, just use it. And in that game, it is legal to do that. It is okay. If an add-on does something that it's not allowed to do, 9 times out of 10, Blizzard will just make it so that it can't do that anymore. Like, they'll just make it so that the commands that this add-on connects to do that thing, they just remove them. Like, years ago, it was possible in World of Warcraft to, like, the DBM, Deadly Boss Mods, would show like a radar on your screen showing how close players were to you if there was a mechanic happening or coming up that required you to be a certain distance from other players. At some point, this was so effective, like there was a tool that, like there was a boss where this kind of action was so impacted by the ability to do that they could completely trivialize one of the hardest mechanics on a boss by using this kind of effect. So Blizzard removed that. The way that DBM continued to be able to do that is that it instead switched over to you need to be within a certain distance of another player to be able to inspect them or trade with them. And it could just use a command to check if you could trade with players or inspect them. And it could use that to determine whether players were too close or not. And it would just show a list instead. Like, that degradation of the complexity of DBM was simply because it was pushed back. Like, you can't have that. Also, Christine, I have a level 30 to 100 guide for Machinist. I think Aradel just posted it there. But it's level 30 to 100. It explains all of it. And it does include a level 100, like, summary, as usual. Thank you, Christine. But yeah, you can see on the other side of the fence that in Final Fantasy XIV, they just don't do that. Mechanics are made to be beaten by humans. And then every time players use plugins to overcome it, Well, it's not that many bans that come out over it. But sometimes the disappointment itself is effective for some players. We have also, I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure it was an Endwalker that Yoshi P said, if you're just going to keep cheating to beat these ultimates, there's no point in us making them. Which, yes, is basically a threat. Stop cheating, or we close the ultimate valve. No more ultimates. And some people got the point. Some didn't. Exactly, Cat. Cat says, Shadowlands had a mechanic where a boss would spawn copies of players, and it was up to the players to find and kill the imposters. This was, of course, solved by a weak aura that marks the false players. Wow, how amazing! Ashley says, so on the opposite side, is it proper to call out griefers like I had in Dawn Meg when a player was going without a job crystal? It's complicated. I would say if you see someone without a job crystal that far up and you ask them about it, there is a possibility that they'll respond, oh no, I don't have a job crystal. Like, if they actually realize that they goofed it up. If that happens, I would probably say, okay, well, maybe we can make it. Like, maybe we can make it. But I would also say that at that point, they should be okay with getting kicked or themselves leaving, right? But depending on what they say, you might not have very much, like, it might not be very easy to prove that they legitimately meant malice when they joined the group as a conjurer. I don't know. Jose Vegas, Rich Star, hope you're doing well. And Joshua. And thank you. Right. Duties again. If you'd like to join me for Trials Roulette, come over to me. I'll just move over here so that there isn't, like, in case Cat went AFK or something. Oh, Sid's dead. Looks like a little bit of another lag spike. Very annoying, this. And I agree with that, Solization. Just like you can't queue into anything with Blue Mage, it should just make it so that if you're, like, if you're queuing for something that is, like, above level 30, as a class, it should require that you have a full pre-made, in my opinion. There's no reason why that isn't the case. We're only 7. Oh, wait. Now we're 8. I guess Sip exploded. The game already checks for Jobstone in Frontline, no? No reason not to have it for other yeah, I agree. I agree. It shouldn't be that hard, should it? Yeah, one day maybe we will get... Oh boy. We'll get worldwide data center travel, and we'll see what we do with that. It's just, weren't they testing it at some point? Oh yeah, the OCE data center travel was a test. Then they polished it up a little bit, and then just let us keep it. Oh. I'm glad to hear that, Yureen. Yeah, I could imagine it's harder to enjoy a stream when you're in it. Hey, Christoph, didn't Summoner also have that? Didn't they get access to Thunder? What do you mean, as in they had both? Wow, this is an annoying time for the 2-minute burst, isn't it? Wow. It was very annoying. That was we got like 3 seconds. And yes, this is maximum zoom. It's terrible on Viper. Yeah, that's probably very boring, but on the other hand, you're not exactly missing out on like you don't even have any cooldowns, right? Like, it's not so bad. Like, you don't have any cooldowns to drift. Maybe a little boring. Did you know that if you run away from the portal, you can outrun the full dot, so that you don't sit on that for the entire intermission, like so. It also enables you to have a permanent invuln as a paladin, at least. Less helpful for Dark Knight. Or not permanent, but for the entire intermission. Are you kidding me, man? Can you sit down for 5 seconds and actually give us those ends of days that you're promising? You. What? Oh, right. Story skip on that character. I thought that's an incredible irony, isn't it, Ashley? We could do normal raids next. We're basically all here. I'm pretty sure Aradel usually says they'd rather sit out if someone else wants to go. Oh. We could also do alliance raids if you have those. We can also just not change it. Well, we're back to 7. It is pretty funny, considering how the whole, like, preventing the end of days, that there are so many, like, ASEAN-related spells that directly refer to them. Well, in that case, we're doing normal raids first. Does Sip or Aradel want to come along? They channel their trauma into their magic. Ah! There you go. Now that actually makes sense. Considering how much their magic is associated with their imagination. No, I did read exactly what Sip said. I also just sat here thinking it's incredibly funny how I have so many friends that are like, I go, anyone want to go? And they all go, ah, no, you first. And then I'm sitting there like, so who am I inviting? I mean, it would be much worse if, like, I had so many friends that are like, no, I want to go. Only me. Like, that would be way worse, but it's pretty funny. You could have just asked, Sip. Yeah, exactly, the Canadian argument. Is Coco ready? Ashley says, has anyone tested if wall-to-wall dungeon pulling is faster? Can you clarify what you mean by that? Do you mean whether it's faster to do big pulls? Or do you mean all the way to the wall pulls? Like, clarification. If it's whether people have tested if wall-to-wall pulling, like the general idea of just the pulling itself of multiple packs is faster. I can tell you, yes, it is faster. Absolutely. But in regards to the pulling all the way to the wall, it's complicated because there's a lot of factors playing in. There's a lot of factors playing in. Any tips on recovery for Black Mage when you have to drop state due to mechanics? Unless it's something, like, if it's something where you can still act, then you click transpose. You just click transpose. If it's something where you cannot act, then what you should have done is travel back in time and then use transpose Umbral Soul 2 GCDs before that happened. And just remember that for the future. But yeah, if you transpose to Ice and then Umbral Soul, then it locks the timer. And that's probably what it's about, Darth says. If you stop pulling when there are no more mobs to pull versus pulling to the wall itself, that's probably not faster. See, the thing is, there's a lot of factors to this. I guess we ran out of players then. I guess we'll have to be just 7. We'll do alliance raids after, then you can come back in, Ilya. The reason why it's complicated is because if you stop where the pack, like where the last pack happens to be, then everyone can use cooldowns right then and there and, you know, get more damage out quicker because the cooldowns get used sooner. And the time lost having to run that little bit further when the wall disappears, when the pack is over, is time where your cooldowns can tick and get ready again. If you instead have the tank pull all the way up to the wall, then you spend... Like, then it means, effectively, that the... that everyone will have to hold their cooldowns until you stop moving. Like, it's generally difficult for a lot of jobs to actually maximize their damage on enemies that are actively, like, shuffling around. So usually players will wait. Some things just can't be used before you stop moving. Like, for instance, the ninja can't put down dot hunt before you stop moving. Oh, wow. On the other hand, if there's, like, let's say an extremely long way to the whoops, I didn't mean to do that. To the next pack, like for instance in Skydeep Shinobi, like just the penultimate pack where it's like 30 miles until the next thing, there could be an argument that there it would actually be a pretty good idea to pull them just a little bit of the way so that you don't have to run all the way. But at the same time, the argument that your cooldowns can tick during that still applies. Like, that argument still works. So, I would say, on average, it's going to be better to just stop where the last pack is. Because there are so few cases where it might be better to run all the way to the wall. There's also the extra detail that... Would you rather run that section with mobs smacking you in the back? Or would you rather do that section while you're not being smacked in the back? But that is the reason why your average tank will also just stop where the last pack is, because it's generally easier. There is one argument for pulling all the way to the wall that I think is pretty reasonable, that might easily be overlooked. That argument being, if you don't know the dungeon, how are you to know if it actually is the last pack that you're currently fighting? Right? How will you possibly know this? Which, by extension, means... Oh, watch the head. By extension means that if you don't actually know if you found the last pack, you should keep going. But I feel like when we introduce the aspect of, well, maybe you don't know the dungeon, then I think we're no longer in speedrunning mode. Right? But that is an argument that I think is pretty reasonable. That how will you know to stop if you don't know what the last pack is? Like, I do that sometimes in Origenics. I'll continue to run forward even though there is not another pack. The only reason why I do that is because, like, the only reason why I don't know, like, I check if there's another pack is because I only got one. Like, typically there's two, at least, right? So I keep going because I only got one. Weird. Oh boy. Quick, commend the tank! But yeah, it is a difficult conversation. Because there are some different elements to it. What's the proper use of, say, passage of arms on multi-stack attacks like Archmon? If there is an attackable target, the general idea is that you weave it. Like, pay close attention to the buffs on the other players behind me. Now it ended. So, like, as long as you time it so that it covers as many hits as possible, you get the most of it without losing damage. But if you need the damage reduction from passive arms, you could hold it for longer. If there's no attackable target, you could also just hold it for the whole thing. But for multi-hit attacks, I would say just, you know, weave it like a moment before the first hit lands. That fight on content in week 1 or 2 was an interesting endeavor. A few weeks after the first raid tier of Endwalker came out, which was that boss that we fought just then, I did it on a Sunday afternoon with 2 friends that needed their first clear. That was some of my best evidence that there are some terrible players that only play on Sundays. Of course, there are players all week long that are good and bad, that play at random times where it makes sense. But I had a co-healer that was a Sage that only attacked. They put Cardia on a tank and then just attacked. We had many deaths, but what do you mean, Res? That doesn't do damage. So I basically had to solo heal that, and we wiped many times. I think it took us over 30 minutes. We've actually since done specifically Hippocampus, the fight we just had, with a Conjurer as one of our healers. I believe it was Gazel that played it, because we were doing it minimum item level, and we were seeking further challenges. I think we also had some fights where we weren't even a full party, and things like that. So, like, if you're good enough, it's not that bad. I will say, Ridley, the gold standard of my Dailies Hangout streams is that we queue for normal raids, and it'll be a shock if it's not Alexander. And then we queue for Alliance raids, and it'll be a shock if it's not Crystal Tower. So if you're contemplating saving us, it'll probably be Crystal Tower anyway. That Sage just wanted to play Machinist. Yeah, they wanted to play Machinist, but they wanted the healer queue. Sasako says, my story for that, we did it in one pull. It lasted long enough for us to build 8 limit break bars. I don't know how long that would be. But it does remind me. Nox, are you ready? I guess you are. It reminds me that the first boss in the first Endwalker raid tier was beaten solo on content when it was still new, so people probably didn't have full best in slot yet, and it was done by, you know, people that had nothing better to do. Solo with Warrior and Paladin and Gunbreaker. I can't remember if they did it with Dark Knight, but basically all the tanks that had a decent amount of self-sustain could do it. Let me just do this. Did you also want to come, Giraheen? We can probably do a switcheroo then. We're queuing for Alliance Raid, which might be Crystal Tower. I understand from Cat that that might be something you would appreciate. I don't know, are you also in the Shadowbringers Relic grind? Any stories of you yeeting yourself off an edge? Yes, I have one. When we did... oh, sorry, Crystal Tower for rat tasks. Right. I think there is a task for Shadowbringers Relics as well. When we did... so, near the start of Dawntrail, I hosted a little group to clear every single extreme in Endwalker so that I could unlock Mental Roulette. We did it unsynced. I believe that was when I did the most... was it there? Or was it a different run? I can't remember which one it was, but we had a run where I landed in Golbez. I can't remember if it was extreme or normal. I think that was it, but it could have been a random one. Where I was in as Reaper, and my opener, amazing as it was to use Hell's Egress and promptly die. As the poll started. Does it get any better than that? 10 out of 10. Whee! Splat. Thanks, Gazel. Nice opener. Just splat. Dead. The Golbez fight. The Blade fight. Yeah, I believe the reasons, like the challenges of doing P1N, so normal, as a solo player, was that the limiting factor was actually the duty timer. As in, I recall that there was some concerns with Paladin exactly because you would probably need to use Clemency every so often, maybe. And that could eat up too much time. And Dark Knight might be... I think it was a case of Dark Knight might be able to do it, but it had to get a little weird with it to survive, whereas the other tanks didn't. Not enough weird. Which meant that the limiting factor was more the duty timer than the boss's actual mechanics. Golbez. Did one of you guys just jump off the arena? Yeah, didn't need him. Might even be our strongest player. We don't need him. You're too easy. Are you serious? There's also a fun clip of... Oh yeah, that one was amazing. Is that the one where I go, I'm pretty sure this'll be fine. And then I splat. Immediately. Famous last words. Just standing in the death ray as it is coming at you and going, I'm pretty sure I can survive this. That's, by the way, that's me in Monster Hunter Rise with a shield. No, wait, not Rise. Iceborne with a shield, tanking Sharaishvalda's laser beam and going, I can survive this. You can, if you have full HP. That shield ain't doing much for you. Oh yeah, Girin, that was Ilana. Which Ilana mentioned, I think you beat my Hills Ingress on Titan. That was also funny. I believe that was our Titan Extreme Countdown. And for those that don't know what I mean by Extreme Countdown, there are some streams on the channel. It's been a while since we did one. There are some streams where what we did is that we would go into an old Extreme, synced, just synced. And then if we beat it, we'd remove a player from the group. And we'd keep doing that until we couldn't anymore. As in, until we couldn't beat it. That has led, like, some of those trivia things I mention in some of the mentor videos, where I'm like, by the way, you can beat this Extreme with so-and-so players. It's there, I know that from. It's like, you can beat Ramuh Extreme with 3 players. Because we did. I believe it was a Scholar and 2 tanks. I can't remember what tanks it was, but I was the Scholar. Oh, both of the other tanks have tank stands on as well. Then I don't wanna. I don't wanna fight. I don't wanna fight. It doesn't really matter. Why do I feel Ramuh Extreme would be easier with less players while synced? It has like a sweet spot. I recall 8 players we actually wiped multiple times, and I think when we were down to like 6 players, it was actually kind of okay. But as you go further down, you start running into issues where, like, it might actually be a slight problem that you, like, get overwhelmed with orbs from other sources. And there's, of course, also DPS requirements you have to meet that only really come into their own when you're down to 3. Because then you don't even have a single DPS in your group. I think we did, like, try to, like, theorize how you could maybe do it with 1 tank, but since we beat it with 3 players, 2 of them being tanks, it was like the only reason you would go down to 1 tank at that point would be 1 tank, 1 healer, and then you can't meet the DPS check anyway. The weirdest one for me, in regards to them getting easier with less players, was Ultima Weapon. Also, Eaterhead, hope you're doing well. Like, Ultima Weapon, I think I mentioned this in a Mentor video a little bit ago. Some weeks ago. But, long story short, the whole fight is just like a list of HP thresholds. Like Ultimate Weapon Extreme, of course. Which means that as you go down in damage output, is that a... It looks like a Sonic outfit. Like a Sonic cosplay or something? Wow. I didn't even do anything. Amazing. Why is there a scholar up there? What? Why? 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 The tank didn't change. It's the same tank. Why did they change their mind? Oh, you're right, Sip. Sip said in game, maybe it's the scholar going, hey, you should be standing up here, and they might be on voice comms. Because the tank is actually a sprout. Sad. I refuse. I'll stay here. I don't want to now. But yeah, because Ultimate Weapon Extreme is just like segments of HP thresholds, when you burst him down super duper fast, he'll just skip. He will actually not skip phases. He'll just, well, he will skip phases, but he will also like just have like interlacing mechanics where it can get really, really scary. Like super close to like super close between the first wave of orbs and the second wave of orbs and the third wave of orbs, and just inconvenient mechanic overlaps where like the first set of orbs is like right next to like proximity AoEs happening near them. But as you reduce the player count or slow down your DPS, whatever you choose, the mechanics start to come out in a more natural way. And it is so helpful for like the ease of the fight that we managed to beat Ultimate Weapon Extreme with 2 Gunbreakers and nothing else. And you might be wondering, why 2 Gunbreakers? Aurora. Hey Saros, hope you're doing well. There's supposedly a trick that if you don't touch the mobs that come out of it, they'll naturally run to the platform so the people on the platform get something to do. So try and just don't hurt them. I want to see if it actually works. It doesn't seem to work. Guardian's biggest weapon beaten by their own badge attack. That would be pretty funny. Interestingly, I think we talked about this lore stuff in a recent stream as well, but the story goes that the Guardians stole gunblades from... was it Boja? The blades of Gunhilde, at least. And then they devised the genius the technology of what if we just didn't have a blade on it? And thus guns were born. And the kind of gunblades we use are the not Guardian gunblades. Which means our technology was clearly superior all along. Which is probably even more painful. Sandman. Oh, this fight is so fun as Team C. Yeah, the best you can do there, unfortunately, Zarf, is I guess you could use you could hold true north. Like that doesn't solve the problem, but it helps alleviate it a bit. Also true, Chilitators, but it's still pretty funny that apparently I'm like 99% certain that the official lore for Final Fantasy XIV is that in Final Fantasy XIV, the blades of Gunhilde used gun blades, but they were not named gun blades because there was a gun on the blade. They were named gun blades because they were the blades of Gunhilde. And then someone went, wait, what if we remove the blade? Like, that's a weird order of business, isn't it? I don't know if that's where it comes from in reality, Valvardis, but I would be shocked if we developed sword with gun on it and then gun. You get what I mean? Like, that's the part that goes, what? Can I would like that mod, thank you. Goonblade. Not quite. But I see where you're going with this. Do wall bosses get affected by positionals? Nope. There are enemies with what I usually call closed targeting reticles. They will not have an open back like this one. And furthermore, their like arrow pointing where they're facing will be inside the circle instead of outside. You'll find that basically all wall bosses will have that kind of targeting reticle where the arrow is inside. They've also additionally, with Dawntrail, well, with the first raid tier more specifically, they added a special temporary targeting reticle. I can't remember what it was called exactly, something like Reckless Abandon or something like that, which Wicked Thunder uses in M4N, and the final boss of the newest Expert Dungeon also uses. And when that targeting reticle appears, it means that, at least for now, they're ignoring, like, the positionals automatically succeed. Does True North have any effect on, say, Zodiac or Zeromus? No. It doesn't add anything, because you already have the effect by default. Hey Alejandro, hope you're doing well. I think it's going pretty well here. I wish they'd explain that in the game somehow. Yeah, that would probably be a great idea. I'll just go over here with Mr. Man. No, apparently another tank really wanted Mr. Man. That was the same tank that stole my mob on the bomb pack before as well. You're doing mental roulettes? No, we're just doing dailies. And we landed here when we queued Alliance Roulette. That is a pretty common thing when you bring a full pre-made. Somehow. I think if I was doing mental roulette on live stream, I would probably had put that in the live stream. That would be a little special, I feel. But yeah, it's not pretty clear. It's not pretty clear from just looking at what's happening. Well, the funny thing there actually is that I guess if you played Final Fantasy XIV early enough in its lifespan, you would have naturally figured this out. Because there was a time, long time ago, when if you didn't do the positional right, the combo didn't count. As in, you get the positional wrong. Now, what's a good example? Now Twin Snakes does not give you a damage buff. Demolish does not apply a dot. And also, Twin Snakes might not even push you to the next form. I'm not sure on that one, but I do remember that Dragoon's combos didn't continue if you didn't do the positional. But that's something I've heard because it was removed after Heavensward. And consider that this would also happen if you missed, which could happen if you didn't have enough accuracy. And if you've done some of the guild test stuff and some of the Hall of the Novice stuff, you'll also have heard that supposedly you have a lower chance of missing when you're doing when you're attacking an enemy from behind. That's not a thing, not anymore, but it was a thing. I think what I would aim for next would be Juno and M4N. And I'm pretty sure there's multiple people here that can't or don't want to join for that. So if you are in the party and you don't want to join for... We're starting with Juno. Then, well, I'm assuming those that are in the party wants to join for it. Cat says, while using a job, you will have limited access to actions from other classes. Is still a line in the game. Now, that is really funny. And you know what? If you're going... If you could be pedantic enough to go, I mean, technically this is Marauder actions, but we know what it's supposed to mean. It looks like we have space for one more, Zaf, if you want to join. And yeah, exactly, Eaterit. I remember picking up Monk, well, Pugilist, in Stormblood, and one of the things that I hated the most was that everything in regards to positionals, you could just throw it out the window while you're playing alone. At the moment, Alejandro, I'm only streaming on YouTube. But if one day my Twitch channel should activate and stream something, there should be a link. If you go to the channel page, there's like this, you know, there's that like that little blurb at the top of all channels where it like says some little description. If you click on that, it should show links to like everything associated with me. And there should be a Twitch channel that you can follow. Yeah, just don't worry about it, Aradel. That is why I'm just saying where you can find it. But yeah, speaking of positionals, the reason why Monk was particularly egregious with this is because this, and this, so these three, well, the low-level versions, right, used to be back positionals. All three. Similarly, this, and this was side positionals, like flank positionals. Which means if you've ever seen a monk that is basically like... Oh. It starts a little nicer. Like going back and forth like crazy like this. Then there's a very high probability that they have played monk for a very long time. Because essentially you had to alternate so often. Got a little crazy. Thank you, Mad Hatter. Something that a lot of people recommend if you're getting into harder content, that is not something that everyone wants, but something that you might find helpful if it's something you normally tussle with, is that this option allows you to split up the target UI, and that allows you to grab their cast bar. And you can make the cast bar really big, and you can put it somewhere where it's easier to see. You can do stuff similar to that with other things, like you can split up your buffs and stuff so you can find the things you need when you need them. I've deliberately kept my UI pretty simple so that when you hop into the stream or watch my videos, you don't get distracted by my UI being ridiculously unusual or something. It should look pretty close to the base UI. Pretty close, not exactly. That's correct, Nox. For some reason, Bootshine's positional effect was the crit. What do you say is your favorite job to play? It changes a bit, but I do play Warrior quite a lot, so I'll probably say Warrior. Do you find Viper to be a bit too simple? No. I think Viper is pretty fine as it is. Personally, I think also that it was a little too quick on the trigger that that they removed Noxious Nash. Like, I feel like we need a little bit more time on that one before they just took it away. But overall, I think Viper is pretty fine. It accomplishes what it seems to be aiming to accomplish. Like, if we ignore the pace, like the speed of the job, I would say Viper, and also if we ignore the part where Viper's unlocked at level 80. But if we ignore those parts, I think Viper's actually a really good job for like getting into melee DPS. Just double checking, Nox, are you ready? Because you did say 1 sec, and then I sent a ready check and you immediately click yes. What's your off-stream UI look like then? It's this. It's this. I don't have a separate off-stream UI. I have a PvP UI where I have limit break move further down and buffs in a different position. And I have a UI where my hotbars are extremely big that I use for my job guides. But this is the UI I normally use. Ashley says, why would they keep Death's Design and not Noxious Nash? I mean, Death's Design is an extremely simple mechanic. Noxious Nash is only, by the way you interact with it, is only slightly more complicated. But the best answer I can give to that, Ashley, is that, as far as I remember, and also, hey Grace, hope you're doing well. As far as I remember, there were a lot of players complaining that Viper was quote-unquote too complicated right at the Dawntrail launch. But my impression of that was that most of the players saying that it was too complicated were players that tried it for 5 minutes and went, nah. Or players that had no intention of maining it. Because most of the players that were maining it was like, oh, this is great. Could use a little something here and there, but this is great. So my impression was that the players that demanded the job get changed were the players that had no interest in the job in the first place. And the thing is, the players that said that it was too complicated were not saying it as in remove Noxious Nash. They were just saying it's too much. And then the developers were like, I guess we could remove some of the positionals to make it a little less hectic. And the players that actually like playing Viper as it is were then like, no, do not touch the positionals. Do not touch the positionals. And then the developers, instead of going, okay, then what should we touch instead? They just said nothing. And then on patch day went, oh, by the way, we removed Noxious Nash. And the Viper players went like, ugh, my Noxious Nash. Ugh. I'm pretty sure that if the way that conversation had gone had been, do you want us to remove positionals or Noxious Nash? Then I'm actually pretty sure that a lot of them would have gone, okay, then take the positionals. But just don't change anything, actually. Like, that was what the problem was that the developers went, well, they don't want us to remove the positionals, so we'll remove something else. And that is probably also the explanation for why they removed Noxious Nash, but not Death's Design. Because it might have been a little bit of a, like, a spur-of-the-moment decision. Like, they went, well, we have to do something. Which, like, the saddest part about that is that actually, no, they didn't have to do anything. The players that demanded change were players that would just go, I'll just play something else. Like, if you don't change Viper, then I will play the job that I was playing already. I just find it kind of annoying that Viper's a little complicated when I'm picking it up to level a little bit every now and then. And the players that actually liked it, well, might not appreciate the change. Like, that's most of the story with Viper. Like, now we've had, like, obviously, we've had not Noxious Nash for, like, many times more than we've had Viper with Noxious Nash, which means that the average Viper main probably doesn't really care. There's probably a high likelihood that the players that actually really cared stopped playing Viper. So going, well, all the Viper mains don't care now is a little bit like like going, okay, so for this party we're offering like there's going to be like everything at the party is going to have peanuts in it. Everything at the party is going to have peanuts in it. And if you're allergic to peanuts, then I guess get owned, mate. I guess you'll just have to starve. And then all of the people that are allergic to peanuts or don't like peanuts no-show. Like, they just don't show up. And then, like, during the party, you're like, huh, isn't it weird why, like, there's no people that are allergic to peanuts or don't like peanuts? You know, they left. You scared them away. That's not to say that there's probably Viper mains or players that play Viper that just didn't care enough about Noxious Nash. I'm not suggesting that only people that don't care about Noxious Nash still play it. Like, I'm sure some players went, ah, well, and then just went on with their life, right? Oh yeah. TND says, is there a reason to not use Reprisal on cooldown in Alliance raids? I know there's lots of tanks not using it at all. It has 60-second cooldown. The answer to that, TND, is that with no communication between the tanks, you will probably not actually get very much value out of it. So I usually use Reprisal as like a reactive thing, and then both of the other tanks do it too. But optimally, with 3 tanks, you could have it like up for 75% of the fight, right? Like, you could. But yeah, with no communication, using it quote-unquote on cooldown will just mean that you have 1 reprisal. And not 3. But optimally, you could do that. It's a little bit similar to if you had 6 ninjas in an alliance raid, you could have permanent Dokomori, but that also requires that the ninjas know what order to do it in. If you had back in Endwalker, if you had hypothetically 4 summoners in your DPS lineup, you could have permanent Searing Light because it lasted 30 seconds. Not very often that actually was how to, like, actually panned out.
This wasn't how it was supposed to go.
So I think that would be the reason, TMD. And yet that one is also pretty interesting, actually. The most interesting part about the 3 Nastrons versus 1 discussion that happened as a result of the somewhat recent change to Dragoon, where they made it so that you get, when you use Geishkagul, you get 1 Nasrond instead of 3. For whatever reason, they changed that. The players that liked the intensity of Dragoon with all those were possibly a little bit mad that was changed just out of nowhere. But I think the funniest part about that conversation is that for some reason, the action that caught strays was Life Surge. Like, a lot of players were like, why didn't you just remove Life Surge instead? And the reason why I find that so weird is because removing Life Surge wouldn't, like, reduce the intensity nearly as much as removing 2 Nastrons. Not in the same way. And it would also change the job in a different way. In a way that I think a lot of players don't realize.
On your guard. I sense something up ahead.
Like, Dragoon's entire rotation is like a looping's 10-step sequence, right? On the GCD.
A dragon.
And then the OGCD is just doing whatever it wants. And the only thing that actually connects these 2 things is Life Surge. Which means, as long as Life Surge exists, there is a bridge between the 2. If that's removed, then I feel, and I'm not a Dragoon main obviously, so I might not understand, but I feel that removing Life Surge would take something away that players don't realize how much it matters. And they won't realize until they see that it's gone. So Knight, hope you and Master, hope you're both doing well. And yeah, also that, Master. Part of the reason is that the amount of times where I've used Reprisal reactively only for my co-tank to immediately do it too, or vice versa. And you can't, like, I don't even know how many times that has happened, but actually it just happened now. There you go. +1. It's difficult to say the count because it's actively increasing as we speak. Yeah, I get that, Suzaku. The Life Surge is a little bit annoying when you only have 1. But you still just optimize around it. Like, it's the same as with Machinist and Reassemble, right? Eventually you get buttons to use it on more easily, and eventually get an extra charge and whatnot. But I would also posit that some of the players that are like, life surge should be removed. I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure part of the reason why people are so, mad about it or hate it so much is because it's not very interesting. Like, that would be an argument that I can agree with. But by what I mean by that is, it feels to me like if Life Surge was still named Life Surge, and you don't even need to change the name. But instead of them just giving you crazy new animations for their filler rotation as it is, they made it so that when you use Life Surge, Full Thrust turns into Heaven's Thrust, and Chaos Thrust turns into Chaotic Spring, and things like that. And they then had some sort of like, they don't even need to do anything special, they can just do more damage like they already do. If that was the only thing they changed, I have a feeling that people would be less inclined to say that Life Surge should be removed. Because now it's suddenly cool. I don't know how many that would resonate with, but I'm sure that even if you go, nah, I don't care, you can see how a lot of players would immediately suddenly like Life Surge if that was how it had worked all along. And also that one, Cat saying, I would rather see Mirage Dive removed. That one is quite strange, because that one used to serve a purpose, and that purpose has been removed. Let's see, Samurai is the Black Mage of Melee. A little bit. A little bit. What did Mirage do? Before Dawntrail, the way Dragoon worked was that when you used Mirage Dive, you gained 1 stack of like an eye buff on your like gauge. The gauge that you still have, by the way. And when you got 2 stacks, the next time you used Gaishgagul, you would go into Life of the Dragon mode for 30 seconds. And in those 30 seconds, and by the way, it didn't increase your damage. Those 30 seconds, you just had access to Nastrond and Stardiver. And Stardiver had a cooldown of 30 seconds, so you could only use it once. And Nastrond had a cooldown of 10 seconds, which meant that you could, by using it on cooldown, use it 3 times. But you could only fit 2 in your burst. That was what it did. And that was what Mirage Dive did. Was that you used jump and then you used Mirage Dive, and Mirage Dive gave you resource. And they just removed that whole interaction, which means Mirage Dive does damage now. That's what it does. That's all it does, is damage. I would say the way that worked led to Dragoon having a really wacky optimal rotation. Because if you use your resources quote-unquote optimally or as effectively to generate resources as possible, your first Life of the Dragon would be 30 seconds into the fight, completely misaligned from all of your buffs. But if you alternated the order in which you did them, so that you did Mirage Dive first and... no, wait. So that you did Gaishgagul first and then Mirage Dive, then you would consistently get your first Life of the Dragon 60 seconds into the fight. But it was incredibly counterintuitive, because it meant that you were deliberately choosing to delay such a valuable resource. Flamingo. So I see why they removed it. Does the Dragoon job gauge even do anything anymore now that we don't have to worry about eyes? I believe it turns into a 20-second timer when you use Gaishgagul. That is a pretty good example, Strider Shinryu, by the way. Saying, I enjoy current Dark Knight much more than previous Dark Knight just because the new combo animations went under Delirium. Sometimes it doesn't take that much. And then there's also
5 of them. This should be interesting.
there's also a Warrior that didn't get that, but their inner chaos was upgraded to now be Fellow Cleave. Like, as in, that isn't even like a skill upgrade. It's just they reworked the animation to be more Fel Cleave, where before it was fancier Inner Beast, like the low-level one. Like, basically the developers realized that warriors love Fel Cleave so much that they should not change Fel Cleave in any way. And additionally, the best thing you could gift warriors would be more of that. Just more.
You shall be consumed by the cowardice that binds you.
Yeah, the atonement upgrade was also like that was both a like that was also a mechanical change, but that is also a new animation that made it a little cooler.
You shall be twisted by the envy that drives you.
Ow. I thought it was going to turn the other way. I didn't mean to meme on all the melees. Sorry, Naomi. Yeah, I'm attacking the wrong target.
Reigns clean.
Yeah.
Cowardice dismembers.
Cowardice dismembers. But Zepcast, that's actually exactly what Darth is saying, because a lot of players were very mad about the Nastron change, where they nerfed it down to only 1 big hit instead of 3. Because exactly, the players loved it. Well, some players loved it, not all of them. Some players also really like that it's easier now. But genuinely, Darth is exactly right, that the players love pressing damage button many times. Now, the problem there is, of course, that I guess that the developers trying to give the players a slightly easier time missed that little detail. But the thing is, in regards to that, sometimes the developers can do everything right, and the players will still hate them for it. Like, the developers can actually make a change that is better for everyone, and the players will still hate it. And sometimes that change is nerfing or changing Dragoon to have 1 Nastron instead of 3. And sometimes it's removing TP from the game. And some players were actually mad about that, because it made the game too simple. Bruh. Bruh. Wow. Arknight, I think I might be able to explain that one. I might be able to explain that one. It's going to be a little weird, but there is an explanation. Removing TP. And before Shadowbringers, there was an additional resource in addition to HP and MP called TP that was used on all physical attacks. You recovered about 60 every 3 seconds, and, you know, physical jobs spent the resource in various amounts. A notable example being that AoE attacks typically were more costly.
You shall be
Whoops.
consumed by the cowardice
In this
that
way.
binds you.
So you would eventually just run out of TP.
Arrogance defiles.
Before Stormblood, I believe, Sprint also ate all of your TP. Which meant that, like, physical jobs couldn't really sprint. Because it wouldn't really work. But yeah, we used to have TP, and some players liked the management that went into that. Ow. Ow.
Well fought. Wuklamat chose her companions well.
But to your thing, Arknight says, it's weird that Ultimate players enjoy jobs getting easier. You play the hardest content but want things easier, people confused. The explanation there is really weird. There are some Ultimate players that are there for a challenge. There are also many Ultimate players, they will tell you that they're there for the challenge. They might be there for the challenge, but they might not fully be there for the challenge. Many of them are there for the achievement. And if it were to them, I'm being a little vague here because I can't say how many there are, but there are definitely some. And I would say that the thing with, you know, Pictomancer being so overwhelmingly popular for Ultimate because it's strong, and things like that, is also a case of making it easier on yourself. It makes sense. It makes sense to do that. It does. Like, nothing to that. Like, it makes sense that you'd make the team composition that is the easiest possible, right? Why make it harder on yourself? You see how this works, right? You can already see where we're going with that. There are a lot of players that are there for the achievement itself. As in, they just want the reward. And the game being easier means that it is easier for them to get the reward. You see? That's how it goes. And some part of it is that for some players, the value in the achievement is in the difficulty of obtaining it. So they would like the content to be easy enough that they can do it, but hard enough that you'll swoon when they say that they have the achievement and you don't. And exactly, TND. I've actually proposed this example before, that there are players that are so focused on optimization that if there was a job that did the most damage and only had one button, it does the most damage. I don't even want to explain how it does it. It just does. It just does more DPS than everyone else. There would be players playing it just because it does the most damage. It's dreadfully boring to play, but it does the most damage, so players would play it. But not only that, there's a reasonable possibility that some of them would defend it and say, no, it's really fun. What are you talking about? It's amazing. My example of that is that every time Dark Knight is not at the top of the charts of tank damage output, Dark Knights immediately start screaming out in agony. And there was a time frame at the start of Dawntrail where this was the case. And that was when a lot of players realized, in their opinion, that Dark Knight is boring. And that its rotation has sucked since Shadowbringers, supposedly. Because it hasn't changed that much since Shadowbringers, effectively. But that wasn't a talking point when Dark Knight was strong. Like, people didn't really care when Dark Knight was strong. Weird, right? But that's basically the demonstration of that thing. with if there was a job that just pressed one button and did the most damage, you make the you design a job. It's boring. If it is boring, it doesn't matter if it does the most damage. People will play it anyway. And some will even defend it. So the truth comes out when your job isn't top DPS. Yeah, basically, once the job isn't the best anymore, then the players that only play it because it's strong will admit that they're only playing it because it's strong. And they will probably jump to the new flavor of the month, right? And the only ones remaining are the players that played it for the job. So what I mean by that is that the players playing Red Mage as their main are likely playing it because they actually like it. Also that, Viek. Sometimes you'll also just get forced to play it, depending on who you're playing with. But yes, the weird reason why we can have this situation where we have players screaming that they want harder content, but they also are happy with their job being easy, or even being made easier, is that they might actually be more interested in being able to get achievements and praise. I don't know. I would say, like, depending on the job, I would appreciate it being a little easier, but for me, like, that's the thing. Speaking of which, the jobs where I would be like, I wouldn't mind it was a little easier, are jobs that I don't play as much because I find them difficult. Meaning that I should not be the person being asked, right? I should not be the person being asked if we should change something about the job, because I'm not the one playing it. That's also why, like, I can explain all I want about how maybe the rework of Dragoon that simplified it this much is actually a good thing, but my opinion on that matter isn't particularly helpful because I was never a Dragoon main. Like, I would just play something else.
Can your vaunted justice withstand the brunt of the deepest rancor and wrath?
That ninja has a death wish. I tried so hard to dodge them. David says, I'll rather have a difficult fight than a difficult rotation, TBH. My opinion on this is actually the exact opposite. There's an explanation for that as well. Actually, it's not the opposite, because my opinion on it has nothing to do with difficulty. Or at least not directly. I would rather have a really complex and challenging to master job than a really complicated and challenging to master fight. Why? Because the job is the rice or potatoes or spaghetti or pasta that you're having having the meal with, right? And you're always having those. And the mechanic is the sauce you put on it. And it would be way better if the actual, like, the main part of the meal was just great on its own. Because if the job is really awesome to play and really interesting and complex and there's a lot to master, it means that every fight automatically has this property. Because it's not the fight. It's the job itself. The whole package is hard. Whereas if you just keep making the jobs simpler and simpler, and so that you have more space for more complicated fights, it means that you have a really bland base. So I really hope the source is amazing, and that's part of the reason why I think possibly Dawntrail might be getting a lot of flack for being easy for some players, or content in it being easy for some players, is that you already mastered the job. Like, you already did that. So the only thing left is the fight, and because there isn't that much to do there, you'll much more quickly adapt to that. I hope that makes sense. But that is the reason. There's also the part that when the jobs are super simple... Now, just to clarify, I think it's a good thing that there are jobs for every... Like, there are jobs in every role that, like, land in different difficulty levels. Like... It's not like all tanks are insanely hard to play. There's like a range so that you can choose what works for you. That's a good thing. But I think it's a good thing when the jobs are the complex part, because that means that you can take the complicated job in any content and find it interesting. Whereas if it's the content that is hard and complex, then it means that when a hardcore player goes into an easy dungeon, they will fall asleep. Like, they'll fall asleep. But if the job is complex, then they at least have the option to mess around with that when they're in easy content, right? Like, that's the reason why I feel that way. Ashley says, would you want Doom to have a unique sound cue? Not necessarily. Take healer jobs, it's way more fun to play them in AR dungeons than they are by Shadowbringers. I know a lot of players that would heavily disagree with you there. But it depends on what you find challenging about them, I think. Also that, Cat. Lots of content gets easy with gear. Performing a job should be engaging. Precisely. They add a new difficult duty. It's only difficult until it isn't anymore. If the job itself is complex, it's not going to stop being complex. Like, you'll get better. But the job was always that complicated. The duties can be trivialized with gear. But the jobs cannot. Well, no, the jobs cannot. But I think an important lesson there for everyone, to what Ashley said, is that the way players observe difficulty, the way people play the game, is very different from each other. Is any job complex while synced down in easy content? Warrior? As I demonstrated in a recent video, has a really wacky interaction with Mithril Tempest, and optimizing Berserk is actually complex. I would say Warrior becomes easier as it levels up, rather than harder. And them getting insane defensive cooldowns also helps with that process. Black Mage is somewhat complex, mildly complex at low levels. Bard is a little weird. But I feel like that one might not count, because it's more like there's just like an empty hole in like the Lego bricks rather than there being something new there. It's just a thing you don't do. But part of the problem there is that part of the reason why the jobs are not that complex at low level is because, I mean, they don't exactly evolve into super complex things. And if the base is very simple, then you can only add so many things as you level up, right? So if the basic package of the job is pretty simple, then it's probably not going to be a lot more complicated at high level. Rockwell says, as someone who just leveled through it, Atonement makes Paladin simpler to maximize Fight or Flight. You know, the funny thing, Rockwell, is that if you don't have Atonement, the long story short is that it's a DPS loss to not use Fight or Flight exactly on cooldown. So you might go, oh, well, actually, I would like to make sure that I have the best possible setup for my Fight or Flight burst with like as many Holy Spirits as possible and all that. Yeah, but it's actually worse than just letting it rip. So in a way, yeah, it's easy, it's simpler to maximize the damage, but it's the same. But yeah, my point being that the jobs being very simple and boring at low level is part of the problem. Like, it's a symptom, possibly, of the simplification. And as long as we have people going, no, it's a good thing that they keep making the job simpler, then we can have more complicated fights. We keep going and grabbing, we keep going over to the budget and grabbing money out of the potatoes package and putting him in the sauce package. And at some point, and I think we've already reached it, honestly, you can't make the sauce any more awesome. But we keep buying more and more expensive sauce. And we need that money for the potatoes. Dairuro says there is a place for harder jobs and easier jobs. Yes. And I'm just saying, if we look at some of the jobs that are generally considered the easiest jobs in the game, like Summoner, there is a huge amount of space for Summoner to still be relatively simple without it be, like, while still making it more complex. Like, you can add more interesting options and decisions to Summoner without making it suddenly impossible to pick up for a more casual player. That's true, Kat. That's also what I usually say when astrologians are like, I miss my sects, is that, well, on the one hand, it was an interesting option, but Regent sect, or Diurnal sect, was generally the stronger one. So if we have 2 barrier healers and 2 region healers, except one of them can also switch to barrier. Yeah, I'm talking about astrologian, really, you wouldn't go, it's fine, we'll bring a white mage and a nocturnal astrologian. No, you bring an astrologian in diurnal and a barrier healer. There's all this talk about potatoes and Saul's getting hungry. Good, then you know that your biological functions are working. But yeah, I would say, and then there's a reason why I have to like add both sides, is I would say it is a good thing that Final Fantasy XIV has jobs in every role in various different skill levels of requirement. Like that there is an easier option, there is a more complicated option. Like just among the healers, you have a simpler to control healer that is a pure healer and a more complex one in each of them. Depending on who you ask, they might flip positions, but generally everyone can find the easier option. The same applies for tanks, the same applies for every DPS category. That's a good thing. And we should keep it that way. But I also think that every single job in Final Fantasy XIV could be more complex without taking away from that thing that I just said. We can have them all still be in this range of difficulty, and they can be more complex. Terrell says, what's the easier tank? In my opinion, it's Warrior, but it's Paladin at low level. At high level, it's like they kind of meet. I would say both Paladin and Warrior are pretty easy. Valbadis, I'm talking about there being a large, like there's space for an easy and a hard, and those in the middle in terms of difficulty of jobs. Oh, right. We're finishing off with a run of M4N. Does everyone in the party right now want to join for that? Does Paladin have the highest button count? I'm pretty sure Scholar has the highest button count, but my count might be slightly skewed by having a place and heal button. D&D says, in my opinion, Paladin is way harder than Warrior. I mean, you did lead with, in my opinion. So, you're allowed to have your opinion. I just think that, both, like, at low level, Paladin's attack rotation is literally 1, 2, 3, right? Where Warrior has their Berserk resource management. As you get to level 70, Warrior just straight up loses that. And as Paladin levels up, they get a little bit more technical with their rotation, but it is definitely easier than Gunbreaker's rotation. And Paladin has ranged options that are actually good, which none of the other tanks have. Which means that Paladin has an easier time dealing with mechanics without losing damage. Which I would say, on the one hand, you could say that makes it easier. On the other hand, it makes it more complex without making it harder. Because it means Paladins can optimize by planning when they use their ranged option. That actually makes the job easier, but if you if you just made Holy Spirit and the Blades combo melee, that would of course make the job harder, but it would also make the job less complex, because it just means that you have no reason to coordinate that. Like, it just removes a planning facet to the job. Having that option makes Paladin more interesting and adds more to the job, without necessarily making it, like, basic. I'll do a Reddit check. Does Gazel want to join for M4N? Because of the cannons, right. Well, I don't think we can hit 8 players, so I guess it'll just be like this. What do you mean, Ashley? How did it break it? Do you mean in the context of it made it boring? Because he couldn't use Berserk for his 1, 2, 3 crit heal. What? If you use Berserk... and then Storm's Path, it also crits the heal. Is that right?
This is nothing personal, but I must have your soul.
Wicked Thunder has returned to the ring!
The reason why that confuses me is because I'm pretty sure I've tested this quite extensively, and that for the heal to also crit, I'm pretty sure that the attack itself has to say that it crits like Primal Rend, Primal Ruination, Inner Chaos, and Chaotic Cyclone does. But then again, none of those attacks have a built-in heal. So that might change some things, and I've never bothered to test this, and I've never noticed. I haven't really had much opportunity to, or not much situations where I cared.
Trope has many uses. Watch and learn.
Oh, look at that massive cannon. Her skills are as sharp as ever.
That was sad. It looked great, but then you overshot by an inch.
A vicious blow! Oh, that'll leave a mark.
Take this! If one needs wings, one needs simply...
I think I'll test that thing with Storm's Path Berserk after this.
Wickedly divine.
Do you have a sub 69 warrior somewhere? You don't even need that. If you've watched enough of my videos, you'll know that. You don't even need that.
How's this?
You don't even need to go into a dungeon or anything. Oh, yeah, that is a Tunnel Dark outfit, isn't it? Bruh.
I'll erase you.
Oh boy. Is neutral sect a useful tool for astrology in general? Yes.
How are you still standing?
But it, yeah, exactly, Cat. But it doesn't deal damage though. Hmm.
I cannot. I must.
No, I think you misunderstand, Sepcast. The entire functionality of neutral sect is not affecting any of your OGCDs. Like the actual functionality of neutral sect doesn't affect any healing options that are not GCDs. So to actually make use of neutral sect costs damage. Now, Sun Sign, which is what follows, is useful without spending any GCDs. But neutral sect doesn't do anything for your OGCDs. It increases your healing magic potency, which only affects spells. As in spells. As in spells. And not abilities. And the effect it applies only affects, like in addition to the healing magic potency, only affects aspected benefic and Helios conjunction. And aspected Helios, of course. But that does mean... What is happening there? That's really strange. I've never seen it do that before. Just going away in 2 steps. We have 2 tooltips. We have to really close them one by one. We can open them at the same time, but we close them one by one. But that does mean that neutral sect can be a little confusing to look at. But it is useful in general. It just depends on how you use it. Neutral sect is insanely powerful. Like, insanely strong. But it costs DPS to quote-unquote use it. Now, I need to test that warrior thing. Well, there's actually the easiest way to test that hypothesis is do this. Oh look, I have Storm's Path and Berserk. Wow, whoopsie daisy. To do this. And this. We have Storm's Path ready. Berserk. Didn't crit heal. No crit heal. What was the trick that Wrath supposedly relied on? What was it? Wasn't that it? Yeah, exactly. Huh. It plus raw intuition. It's absolutely 1,000,000% placebo if it's also raw intuition, because I'll show you that doesn't work either. I'm gonna need you to clarify what the example is, Ashley, because Warrior has no actions that just heal. That also interacts with Berserk. So how do we scale down to level 60? Oh, I think I know what it is now, Ashley. I think I'm getting it. But it has nothing to do with the critting then. Like, it has nothing to do with the healing itself. Indy says Thrill of Battle doesn't work with Bloodwetting, right? That used to be the case. But that was actually a bug that was fixed in 7.1. But it used to be the case. Right, so, second demonstration. Thrill of Battle always worked with Equilibrium. It was specifically Bloodwetting and Raw Intuition that was wacky about it. So we used Berserk, and Raw Intuition, and Storm's Path. A Storm's Path crit. We'll have to try again. I didn't make it easier for myself by having a relatively high crit stat. It could be a weird interaction, but I can say with 100% confidence that, because I have demonstrated exactly how you make a heal auto crit for Warrior. It's in my Warrior guide. It's literally in the guide. The way you do it is you use Raw Intuition and then you use, or Bloodwetting, and then you use attacks that inherently say deliver a critical hit. It has to say so. Berserker's weapon skill attacks. Yes. But you just saw me use Berserk, Storm's Path, as a Marauder, and it didn't crit the heal. You just saw that happen. So, there you go. There it is. Up there, there was a crit. 1. Here, no crits. There it is. That's the interesting thing about claims like this. Is that it takes one failure, one instance of it failing to happen, to demonstrate that it is not true. It'll take a bit, Darth. RNG is like that, but I can guarantee you that it's not because it works. It only works in a dungeon. The game doesn't work like that. But now now that we've tested the original hypothesis, checked that one off, I was not wrong about my understanding of the things that work. No, actually, I'm not trying to throw you or anyone else under the bus. We're trying to learn. We're trying to learn. But now that we've figured that out, we come back to the negotiation table and see what Ashley then said. And that was also what I said just a bit ago, that I think I figured out what Ashley actually meant. And that one makes more sense. I've actually done this myself. Both as Dark Knight, Gunbreaker, and Warrior. And now that you've heard this, and it has to do with 1, 2, 3 combos, I'm sure most of you already know what I mean. You can even do it with Paladin. A bit. Ashley says he was losing DPS and healing because inner release only gives him fell cleaves, but Berserk allowed his heavy swing, Maims, and Storm's Path to crit while allowing the cure potency of Storms to roll along. He's probably not losing DPS from that, but he's definitely losing healing. Yes. The explanation being, for those that are still not sure, if the boss or whatever you're fighting is doing so much damage that you need every single drop of healing you can get. Every single one. Like, you're active, like, you're using Raw Intuition or Bloodwetting on cooldown, and you're still slowly withering out. Because, indeed, on a single target, Warrior does not actually fully heal by using Bloodwetting. They heal a lot, though. And the boss might do so much damage that you need more healing to, like, stay afloat in between the Bloodwettings. If you need every single drop of healing you can get, then it is a pretty huge problem that Fell Cleave does not heal you. Right? Like, that we can probably agree on. Fell Cleave heals 0, so inner release giving you 3 Fell Cleaves that are guaranteed to crit means that you get 3 times 0 healing. Whereas if you could just use Berserk and then just go 1, 2, 3, you're not getting a lot of healing, but you're getting more than 0. And this is like, off memory, it's like about 8% of your HP, maybe a little bit less. That adds up. But, let me just check. It's closer to 5%. I would say that it's maybe exaggerating a little bit to say that his warrior's ruined. But in fairness, my solo challenge has been almost exclusively dungeons. And just in the dungeons department, just the dungeon department, there is not a duty, not one, where the problem is that you're not healing enough as a warrior by the time you have Raw Intuition. That's not the problem. It's always you're not doing enough damage. It's always you're not doing enough damage. Which means that inner release is a net gain. Now, in a trial or something, I could see it be a bigger deal. But in a situation where you're spamming 1, 2, 3s, I could see it, yeah, being a problem that you don't get that slight extra damage. Do all tanks do fine with 2.5 GCD gear? Yes. Guy doesn't know how lucky he got on number 24. Oh yeah, that one. I know how lucky I got, Cat. He's stuck on... Yes. Okay, yes, I know that one. I know that one. I have beaten that one. Solo on Warrior. But there's a key difference here. I'm pretty sure, based on Rad's rules, that he's probably significantly worse geared than I was. So it'll probably be pretty tight. And yeah, it is a DPS check. But I feel like just saying that now that you can't use Berserk to heal yourself with Storm's Path is limiting your view a little bit. Like, being able to do this, like being able to use Inner Release and then just get 3 Fail Cleaves to use, also allows you to, like, delay Storm's path if you're at full HP already. Just as an example, right? I don't know if that's actually helpful, but you could do that. And in a release itself, assuming you actually do that, adds a colossal amount of DPS that you wouldn't have had otherwise, because it gives you 3 Fell Cleaves. But it still comes with a little caveat of, well, I mean, do you actually have spare GCDs to do that? But oh no, I know. What's it, number 24? Is really hard. When I did that fight on stream, when we finally beat it, I didn't have enough time to actually beat the final boss. So we came back later. Yeah, it's a little comparable to... the reason why I compared it to other jobs is because, I mean, if you're dying, a Gunbreaker can go 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 with Brutal Shell and still benefit from No Mercy if you can't do anything else. You can still heal by just going 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. But Dark Knight, you can just not use Delirium and just go 1-2, 3, 1-2, 3, 1-2, 3, 1-2, 3. Before Carbon Spit got the heal added to it, in the same way, you could just use Abyssal Drain. Which was, you know, you lose like 300 potency of damage, but you healed some. And with Paladin, you can go 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, Clemency. Again, if you need healing... He's grinding out Paladin. He's stuck on the second boss of Castrum Albania. You know, the guy with the 3 elements that got reworked. Thank you, Aradil. That was pretty quick. The reason why I'm going, is because at level 70, Paladin's only healing is Clemency. So if he's concerned that he's losing a little bit of damage from inner release, he would lose even more damage with Paladin just in general. And the reason why I said that it's kind of a DPS check is because, as I recall, the boss loops like every 2 minutes. And your Vuln stacks will drop eventually. Yes, that's the one, Vivi. But it does... I specifically remember that the pull that I beat it on, I used... I basically... Every pull I did... I refused to use Holmgang unless it was like, in the next loop I'll beat it. Because... It's like the joke we've had before with skip Saw disband, with like, well, you're going to see Saw later in the fight anyway on Zurvan, so why skip it? Is that if I used Holmgang to skip the first loop, but I need to see 3 loops, then there's no point. Might as well wait until the next loop is the one we beat it on. As Solo Discord, he has tested a secure path out with Paladin. Fair enough. The Susano fight, specifically, Darth, he didn't do synced. But I just want to say, for anyone who's had, like, because some people explained who Wrath was. When Wrath was still in the baby stages of this whole solo challenge he did, I made a video shortly after, when I was made aware of the existence of his run, where I basically demonstrated that it was impossible to solo Final Fantasy XIV the way that he wanted to do it. I didn't say, well, you can't solo the Alliance raids because it won't let you in. I mentioned that in a note and said, let's ignore that. And there were various steps on the journey where it's like, well, you need to unsync this, you need to unsync that. That's also the reason why I know he unsynced Titan normal, because it's impossible to beat synced unless you're using a blue mage, and if you complete something with a blue mage, it doesn't give credit for the MSQ, and you can't unlock blue mage at that point anyway, let alone the spells you would need to meet the DPS check necessary. He beat it with Ninja, if I remember correctly, but it was unsynced because he used Doton, which you don't have at Titan normal. My video, the unbeatable wall was Susano normal. Because he had a strict phase change at around 40% or something. And it was impossible to kill him straight from that without Blue Mage. If I remember correctly, Matthew got it with Blue Mage, but it doesn't count with Blue Mage. But Pictomancer and level 100 made it possible to just insta-kill Susano. But that is also the part of the reason why some players were so excited when they overcame Susano, because I put the wall there. I was probably not the only one, but I put the wall there, and it was memorable enough that at least one, if not two people, put comments on my video saying that it is beatable now. Even though I'm pretty sure Matthew tested this in the first week of Dawntrail. Here it says, pretty sure someone got Susano on Sing and Endwalk with Ninja. Not anyone I know of. And I specifically recall testing. Dotson doesn't do enough damage, so it would have to have been like an absolutely humongous Hyoshoranryu. And yeah, exactly, Knight. That is actually also the way that I initially went about my solo challenge streams. Was that I went into content like minimum item level, synced and everything. But very early in the Heavensward section, I discovered that the difference between synced and minimum item level is pretty huge. Like, we're talking 20% HP. Which meant that a fight that seemed outright impossible became possible when you just did it synced. Oh yeah, it did make that one as well. Thank you, Ardell. But it is complicated. I also remember, I think that might have been the Discord that I ran into when I beat Black Eft from Castrum. Synced with Scholar, that at the time that was like a fight that was so hard that like the people that were doing solo challenges just went like, just unsync it. And what I was told was that like the previous record was level 57 with Scholar or something like that. And that also led to us looking into how big of a difference my gear was making. And it wasn't making that much of a difference because you can actually reach near the item that like the best gear you would need. To like max out your stats for Castrum. Either it says no dots on just big damage. I mean, if you have found the video, I'll take your word for it, but no, you cannot post links in the chat. Only mods and me can post links in the chat, because otherwise there's a lot of bots that go, and then the chat is going to get really, really annoying. But if you have the video of it from Endwalker, then I trust that it's true. You wouldn't say it if it didn't happen. But I will say it's important that you check that it's a level 90 ninja and the release date of the video is before Dawntrail. Because with this solo stuff, there's a lot of people that stop looking at the things that matter. Like, the funniest one that I've heard is that almost every single time that we've talked about Wrath, almost every single time, 6.58, level 90. Fair enough. Almost every time we talked about Wrath, someone, like, somehow will come in on the Titan thing, Titan normal thing, and pretty much every time someone has gone, oh, actually he did do that one synced. And then I'll be like, what level is Titan normal again? Synced? Oh, it's level 36. Yeah, right. What level does Ninja learn Doton at? Would be pretty hard to use Doton at level 36, wouldn't it? And that's usually the end of the argument. No worries, Sav. But the reason why I say that is because the reason why it matters that you double check your source when you say that is because a lot of people don't. And when I say that, it's not me going, oh no, Wrath doesn't deserve that, like, that recognition for having soloed that far. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I'm pretty sure Wrath would also prefer that people say what actually happened instead of what they hoped happened or think happened. Because Ninja at level 36 with Doton is impossible, which makes the story less believable. Whereas actually beating it unsynced, but only at like level 45, is pretty okay. Like, that's pretty good. I just have to admit, I'm a bit disappointed with how quick Wrath gave up on Balzar's Wall synced. Well, we learned that Balzar's Wall is already insanely difficult and seems to pretty much be partly luck-based with the best gear money can buy, right? So, and I'm pretty sure that some players would say that it's the same with Castrum. Which explains why both of these, as far as I know, with the solo Discord community, they have, like, just decided that you, like, you know, don't overdo it, but you can probably just unsync that because it's too hard. But yeah, I get what you mean. It would have been interesting to see him actually do it. But that's also part of the reason why I'm like, why Paladin for Castlevania? I don't think that's going to be easier, but if someone found a way... Also, noted iterate. Thank you. And yeah, exactly. The reason why I usually jumped to the Doton method whenever people talk about Susano normal is because... Oh, we have a lag spike. But only on YouTube. YouTube? Alright, YouTube, tell me that my connection is bad. I'm looking at Shaq having no latency in game. Oh, there it is. YouTube just told me that I'm lagging. I'm lagging. It's me. It totally was me that was looking at my connection having a fit while Shaq was doing a Dark Knight rotation. Knight says, I swear the lag spikes have been horrid for all Final Fantasy XIV streamers lately. I don't know. I heard one other person have the same problem, and they also happen to stream on YouTube. But I've also heard people say that it seems like it's a me problem, like it's a problem that is centered around me, possibly. I don't know. I just think it's really annoying, and I've tried everything I can. So all we can do is laugh at it at this point, right? Right, the reason why I always circle back to the Doton thing for Susano Normal is because whenever people go... Like, every time the conversation about Susano being impossible in Endwalker came up, people would go, can't you do it with Dark Knight? Because they could use Salted Earth and Living Shadow unsynced. Living Shadow will not target the sword without you doing it first, so that doesn't work. And Salted Earth doesn't even remotely last long enough and do enough damage to do it. I tested. Although suggest Summoner, but your pet doesn't attack, and your pet absolutely doesn't attack something you haven't already attacked first. And Slipstream, I mean, you can't place it without a target, so it's going to be a miracle that you actually get that done. And it doesn't do nearly enough damage or last long enough. So that leaves Ninja. And we tested Doton, as I recall. And it doesn't do enough damage. When I tested it in Endwalker, my estimate was that Doton needed to do over double the damage it actually did. Isn't Salted Earth's damage worse than Doton without the activation? Yes, it is. Salted Earth is like, without Salt and Darkness, is like a combined total of 300 potency, but that includes the damage that is applied when you place it, which would miss the sword because you have to place it and then intercept the sword. Doton does, let's see, 7 times 80, 560 total. But the first, like the initial hit will miss the sword, and the sword might not be attackable until after the first tick, so it's probably closer to 5 ticks in total, and then it's 400 potency, and it's just not enough. Yeah, also that actually, like, including that, tank's just doing 20% less damage, so... But it's not even close. Like, Doton wasn't enough in Endwalker. Like, flat, it wasn't enough. And the reason why I usually focused on that was because my conclusion was that Ninja couldn't burst hard enough. And Doton wasn't strong enough. And if we're looking at Ninja, we could have looked at any job, except for the little detail that, and I also demonstrated this in Endwalker, Ninja has the single strongest hit in the game among normal jobs. The only one that beats it is Blue Mage. Do Doton and Salted Earth live on the universal 3-second dot hot timer? I think something like that, but they still tick every 3 seconds. Are AoE fields coded as pets? Nope. Not exactly. Placed fields snapshot your state when you place them. But they scale real time with your target situation. Which ironically means that Doton has a sort of anti-synergy with Kunai's Bane and Dokomori, because when those effects end, Doton stops benefiting from them. If Kunai's Bane and Dokomori had been a personal buff, Doton would have benefited from the whole thing. I have a Mythbuster video on that. But yeah, that makes sense that Ninja would be the one to beat it in Endwalker. I'm sad I didn't see it sooner. But I feel like the biggest takeaway from that Iterate is that sometimes currently isn't the hardest hitting attack six-sided star. You might be right on that. I usually forget that one. Let's see. Paint. In black. Hyosho Ranryu does 1300 potency. But it is exclusively usable during Caetsu, which gives 30% extra, so times 1.3 is 1690. Then Ninja also has Kunai's Bane, which is an additional 10%. And no one else can benefit from that, that's why that matters. This is essentially what Six-Sided Star has to compete with. We're not including Monk because Ninja could use Dokomori, but Monk can also use Brotherhood, and they can benefit from each other. Monk could also have a Ninja in his group when he does his attack. So we're not including raid buffs. So Monk has exactly 780 potency on Six-Sided Star, plus 800 from 10 chakra stacks. And then you have Riddle of Fire, which is 15%. Which is less. But it's pretty close. And again, the reason why we're not including Brotherhood is because even Stevens, Ninja has Dokomori and Monk has Brotherhood. They average each other out, and you could just say that they're in party with each other. So they both get Dokomori and they both get Brotherhood. Why not one of the blitzes? Because Six-Sided Star can do more. The second strongest attack Monk has is Phantom Rush, which is like 80 potency less. And by the way, while we're in the works with this, Aflato's Misery from White Mage is 1360, but White Mage has Maim and Mend, which is times 1.3. If we were to compare White Mage with Monk and Ninja, it would actually matter that White Mage does not have a 5% bonus damage it can offer. And it would fall behind, because both of these would, when compared to White Mage, have this extra advantage. And they're already ahead. Like, in the video I made in Endwalker on the subject, I basically calculated, like, potencies in this way that I'm demonstrating here. And the reason why it never came up that White Mage doesn't have a raid buff to benefit from is because Ninja beat White Mage without one. Like, this wasn't needed. Ninja already won. But it is interesting to know that Monk is second place. Good luck, Sasaku! I'm also probably going to be rounding up here. Because I have a extreme farm in like half an hour. But what I wanted to say to iterate about this, that I then got sidetracked on, is that an interesting thing that can happen with things in life is that it might not matter that you did something exceptional if there's no one to see it. Which does mean that I run into situations like, as I said, I say you can't solo Titan normal synced with a normal job. But you can do it with Blue Mage. I've done so. But people that are interested in solo challenge stuff know Wrath better than me, so they hear me say that and they go, but Wrath, even though Wrath didn't even do what the thing that I said that wasn't possible. He did something that was actually believable. And I then had to defend that. Similarly, based on what I can see, nearly no one cared that someone soloed Tosano normal in Endwalker. But it mattered when Wrath did it. So sometimes the thing that makes the thing exceptional is that there were people to see it. Even though it was exceptional. I'm not saying that as like a, oh, how fascinating. I'm saying it as life sucks. Which is the reason why I just wanted to know the source. Because I didn't know that someone did an Endwalker, because no one told me. Not before either, anyway. Solization says, can't White Mage do like over 1 million damage in Boja? Yes, a lot of jobs can do some insane things in Boja. That is also the reason why when I made that video that the point was, can they do it in any environment? You can't bring Boja out of Boja, unfortunately. If a boss gets soloed in a forest, but there's no one around to hear it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's also the reason why I try whenever my community here, the community, has discovered something. I try my best when I include it in a video to be like, it was actually Bob that did it. It wasn't me. Because otherwise it'll just be something that I discovered. Like I have a video coming out soon that I'm like working on that touches on the whole shenanigans with the rework of PvP. But I wouldn't even know to look for this or know the details of it if it wasn't for Graham, doing a huge amount of the legwork and testing everything. So I of course mention that. Like I'll of course say that. Even if the specific demonstrations that I did may have been unrelated to that, it wasn't me that discovered those weird interactions. At least not... It wasn't me that discovered it for me. Here's a lore discovery I did. 5 years has passed in lore since 2.1. Is that based on other people aging? But fair enough, cool. You know, I bet that would have saved Wrath a lot of headaches to know about that Ninja Soul and Endwalker. Probably. On the one hand, yeah. On the other hand, I think Cat is perfectly on the money there. That I'll probably have to look at the video, but I'm guessing the ninja that did it in Endwalker was like full best in slot, which Wrath wouldn't be able to have. Which is also the reason why I tried to clarify when I talked about my solo challenge that, like, I would use stuff like minimum item level and stuff. But it's still better than having the actual gear. That is interesting, Ashley. Here it says Wrath knew about it. Ah, okay. I mean, I'm guessing that he still had the situation of that's going to be really hard. But with that said, I think this is where we will be rounding up. We did manage to get the dailies that I at least had in mind done, and the weeklies. But that'll be it. And we also had time to have some tea time, essentially. So, if you would you like to give Wrath a possible warrior tip on Castrum? It's been a while, but I mean, I think that it's correct to say that I was probably lucky when I did it. As warrior. Oh wait, sorry. So you say Castrum. Do you mean Castrum Urbania or Castrum Meridianum? I'm guessing it's Abania, since that's what Wrath is fighting with. I would say if he's able to sometimes, and again, luck, right? If he's able to sometimes loop the fight once without Holmgang. It has to be without Holmgang, because it loops, if I remember correctly, it loops in about 2 minutes. So if you rely on Holmgang for the first loop, then you'll die on the second loop. You need to be able to beat the loop without Holmgang. If you can do that, then you can use Holmgang as like a Hail Mary when you know that you'll kill the boss in the next loop. Or alternatively, depending on how long the fight will be for Wrath, you could use Holmgang once you know how to do it without Holmgang. The problem is, if you're trying to proc with Holmgang at first, you're not going to learn how to... Like, you're just wasting time. Because you'll just die on the second loop. Like, focus on the first loop. Once you've figured out how you can do it on the first loop, focus on that. And because there is probably some RNG element to it, yeah, I don't have much advice there. It's also been an age since I did it. But I will say, if you reach Storm's Path, like your next GCD is Storm's Path, but you're at full HP, that is a time to use Inner Release. Because then you can hold the Storm's Path ready to swing it when you need the healing, instead of just throwing it out. And also that, Cat. That is also a really good tip. That was also something that I relied on. If you can shield yourself hard enough with enough kitchen sinking of defensive cooldowns, you can block the Vuln stacks from the pillars that you can't soak. But you can't do that. I don't think you can do that on every loop. Not necessarily. Can't quite remember. It might also not be exactly every 2 minutes that is the loop. But you can shield yourself from the Vuln stacks, and don't waste your time wasting your invuln on the first loop if you don't know how to do the loop without it. Figure out how to do the first loop without Holmgang, and once you've done that, now you can use Holmgang on the first loop. If it actually helps you. I don't know if it does. You'll get the Vuln stacks, and that might not be good. But yeah, that's the best I can offer. And you're welcome to say that I said that if you actually bring that to Wrath. Maybe I will, Ashley. With that said, if you enjoyed this particular stream, it helps me a lot if you leave a like on it here on YouTube. That tells the algorithm this was an enjoyable stream. I'd like other people to enjoy it as well. So thank you so much in advance. And if you'd like to be part of the Discord community server, there's a link in the chat right there that Aridel put, where you'll find the weekly schedule, where you can see what else is happening on the channel in the coming days. I usually update it Sunday or Monday, which will mean later tonight. You'll also find the announcement room with links to videos and streams when they go up. And if you grab the reminder roll, you'll get a notification whenever I post these, as well as an extra one around 15 minutes before stream starts, so you can catch them right when we go live. And if you'd like to support the channel even more directly, you can become a member of the channel, you can gift memberships, you can use the super chat, or if you don't like any of that, there's also a Ko-Fi link in the description, and on the channel in general. It all helps support me and the channel so that I can focus on doing things like this with all of you. So thank you so much for the support. And that will be all from me, so good night, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world, and I hope to see you all very soon. Bye bye!